There you go.
Can you guys hear the music? Hey Ankit, hey Mary, hey Tristan, welcome. I hope some of you had a holiday today and relaxed and brought your dancing shoes. Oh, Ankit didn't have a holiday today? Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of people did. I was surprised that the schools were not closed, but a lot of offices were. That's interesting. And one of my best friends said, you know what, this is the best holiday because my wife and I are off and the kids are in school. That's good perspective, right?
All right. So for everybody who are listening to us, we are 2 minutes to our presentation. Let's give 3 more minutes. We will be getting started at 5. Until then, if you have something interesting to talk about, don't forget that we have a chat. Just chat us and we will definitely pick it up. Oh, I didn't know you have early release too. I thought only federal companies had released.
Hey Ella, welcome. Luba, welcome. Our good old friend Maru, good to see you. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. We are still waiting for a little more critical mass. And we were talking earlier, a lot of people were off today, so probably that has an impact. Hey Sumit, welcome. Hey Subha, welcome from California.
All right, 7:05 it is. Turn on the music. Thank you so much. All right, there you go. Looks like we have some people in here. To everybody who are here to listening, our amazing speakers, Minaxi as well as Toby. Thank you so much for joining. So today, what we are going to talk about is Scrumban. It is one of the favorite topic I have. Not because I love Scrumban, it's because I love to scrutinize it. But again, I'm here to learn from Toby. I'm here to learn from Minaxi. They have a very interesting take to Scrumban. Everybody will going to have a very fun day today. And first of all, thank you so much for joining on a holiday. I appreciate you are here. Now to introduce both of the speaker in here, Minaxi as well as Toby. Both are very passionate agilists. They have been working in the community from almost, I would say, 4 or 5 years now. Toby has been supporting all the people in our industry. If you are interested in speaking or supporting the community, reach out to this guy. He will help you out. And if you're looking for improving yourself, reach out to Minaxi. Minaxi is awesome. Don't tell anybody. It's a secret, right? Minaxi, reach out to Minaxi if you really want to improve yourself, right? So here, we have 2 people in here today to talk about Scrumban. And without any further ado, we are already 5 minutes past. I will give it to Toby and Minaxi.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nash, for the great introduction. I do also want to say that we are at the cusp of our 2nd anniversary for Loudoun Agile Network. All of us who you see in the panel are organizers who started Loudoun Agile Network 2 years ago because there was a void, there was a gap in our community where there weren't enough Agile communities close enough to us. Obviously, at that point, we didn't know that COVID was going to hit and everything was going to become virtual. But we've been, without fail, we've been presenting pretty much every month from beginning, and we are looking forward to our January event where we're going to be celebrating 2 years. With that, let's move forward. So Minaxi and I both are co-organizers here at Loudoun Agile Network, and we thought, this whole year event where we presented so many different amazing thought leaders and agilists and agile practitioners. And towards the close of the year, we thought, why don't we as organizers also present something and share some of the things that we've learned. And with that, I want to introduce Minaxi. I am super grateful to be working with Minaxi. She has a ton of experience both in professional services as well as in the Agile realm. And what really makes Minaxi very remarkable is if you want something done, give it to Minaxi and it'll be done. She's super energetic, super passionate about all things Agile. She's a servant leader and a volunteer and has served at A20 Agile conference, which we had hosted earlier this year in February. She is very passionate about Lean in Agile, which basically promotes and recognizes and celebrates women who are in technology. And she's just an awesome person to work with. And I'm extremely grateful to be presenting today with Minaxi. Minaxi, on to you.
All right, thank you. I don't know if you can see the color in my cheeks just rising, and humbled by that introduction by Nash and Toby. Thank you. LAN has always, been my family here in the United States, and so has Leah. And I see some of the Lean and Agile co-organizers and founders here. So thank you all for coming and supporting us. There, someone says that. So yeah, let me give something back about Toby to the community. So of course, there's this thing about Toby where he presents, he's a very sought after speaker. Literally some of the times, like I need time with Toby and he'll be like, oh, I'm speaking here, I'm speaking there, I step late. He's a global speaker, and he also is a consultant for many federal programs, and he has his own business agility consulting company and all the good stuff you can see on LinkedIn. However, there are things that I can tell you about Toby that you probably would not have known about his
Don't go there.
essence, which is Toby actually moonlighted as a DJ for a big part of his life. He did that out of his love for partying and spreading the love and joy and music. He did that. In fact, when I got to know Toby, I was most surprised. So this is the other side of Toby that not many people. Oh, great cook too. Good. You know that. So yes, his food is awesome. His music is awesome. And he's a totally party person. So that's one thing that I'd like to share about Toby. And now we can probably take the party to the floor of the Scrumban.
Thank you, Minaxi.
You're welcome.
I didn't know you were going to share that my past here. But yes, I was a professional DJ. I just stopped my business this year to focus more on Agile things. But last 7 years, I ran a successful event management company, mainly doing South Asian weddings. All right, so let's move forward with our topic for today. Minaxi, here's the Mentimeter that's coming up. You want to take that? You're on mute, Minaxi.
Yeah. So everyone in the chat, you will see a link for the Mentimeter, or you could just go to menti.com and put in this code. And if you could give your answers to us, that would be awesome. Thank you. So what role do you play in your organization, please? And it does not have to be the title necessarily. It's just like, what is your description that best suits you? Thank you, Anju, for pasting that link.
Okay, and we have 2 minutes for this. And either Minaxi or Nash are going to share the results that come in.
Mm-hmm.
So again, real quick, what role do you currently play in your organization? Just a title. I think there are choices there which you can pick from. And Minaxi, if you're having trouble sharing the screen, you can just share with us how many people are in each category so that we get an idea so that we could perhaps customize the presentation a little bit.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Okay, interesting. A lot of Agile coaches, transformation coach, change management. Yeah. I'm surprised no Scrum Master yet. Okay, this is good. This is good to know. All right, so let's move forward. All right, so why are we here today? So real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to make a very quick introduction to Scrumban. For a lot of you, Scrumban might be a new topic. We're going to touch on that a little bit. We're going to talk about what is the context. Why do we need Scrumban, right? Why do we even need that? And then from a business perspective, what are some of the benefits you get from Scrumban? And then how do you integrate different Agile practices? What is the secret sauce? We're going to share that with you. And then we're going to talk to you about, if you really like some of the things you see today in our presentation, how do you take it back into your organization and make it work? We're going to talk a little bit about measuring progress, like from a metrics perspective. And I think that's about it. And we'll open it up for questions towards the end. So are you ready? All right, let's move forward. Another Mentimeter. So the code is right here, 31692496. And what we want to know from you is what process, and what we really mean is, are you using a particular framework today? And we want to know what that is. And if you're unclear on what it is, then just pick one from the list that we have. And let's see, we will start getting the results soon.
We do Agile, but are not Agile.
Okay.
We are on a mature team. Awesome. So we do have somebody giving us their input. Love to hear from them.
I'm yet to see in our presentations somebody saying what is Agile. I'm glad you guys are not asking that question.
Some ceremonies
Okay.
have Agile certificates. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Yeah. All right. So let me take it back to our presentation. All right. So let's move forward. And next up we have, so the question that we really wanted to get an answer for is that we know across the globe, so many, I mean, a huge number of organizations are using Agile today. And if you follow the annual report that comes from from forgetting the name, Altacian, sorry, from Altacian, which talks about the Agile, which is the Agile survey that is done every year around spring. And I've been following that for 5-6 years now. And you hardly see any organization that, you know, a whole lot of organizations that are still doing majorly waterfall, right? A lot of software development companies have moved to Agile already. And if you look at across the different organizations, they're using Scrum, they are using DSDM, there is XP, there is some Lean, lots of Kanban, and then also scaled Agile practices there. So the question that Minaxi and I had is that, are these frameworks working for you today? Are you using the frameworks as they were prescribed or as the guidance says? Have you made tweaks to them? Or are they giving you the results that you're looking for? And if not, what's stopping us from making slight adjustments? Because at the end of the day, right, it's about being Agile and not doing Agile. It's about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And who's stopping us from taking good practices, good elements from multiple of these and kind of putting them together in what we call a remix, right? Where you take good parts of a song, good parts of another song, beats from another song and make it your own. So what's stopping us from doing that? Nothing. So we should be able to take good parts from different frameworks and customize it based on your organization's particular needs. And that's really is the crux of our presentation today, right? And here's where Cupid comes in and he says, let's mix things together. In fact, it should be a DJ. I forgot to put the headphones on that. All right. So now we're going to talk about what is Scrumban. So before we even get started, and Minaxi and I share some of the things that we brought for you today, if you can put in chat the shortest sentence you can, what is your understanding of the word Scrumban? If you can put it in chat, we'll just take a quick minute. Suba says mixology. Okay. Okay, let's hear a few more. What does Scrumban mean to you? A blended framework. Padma says it's a blended framework, okay? Sumit says Scrum with trade-off during sprint. Interesting. Okay, we want to know more about it and we're going to discuss that. Let's hear two more before we move on. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to volunteer you. Maru, what do you think? There you go. Freestyling, I like that. Freestyling of Kanban principles in a Scrum container. Okay. 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 All right, great. Thank you. All right, so let's move on. So here's what we came up with. We did some research, we looked around, and we came up with this. So what is Scrumban? So and a lot of Agile purists hate the word hybrid Agile. And I do too, to a certain extent. But in this case, I think it's okay. As long as it's not hybrid between waterfall and Agile, as long as the hybrid is coming from one of the brothers or sisters from the framework, I think it's okay. So what definition we came up with that we want to share is that in our opinion, in a very simplistic form, it's a hybrid Agile form approach or a format in which it combines both Scrum and Kanban. So, and if you take it one level deeper, it integrates, everything from a design of Scrum, right? It's the foundation of Scrum, and it adds the visualization of Kanban on top of it. Now, a lot of you might say, hey, we have visualization, we have other metrics where we can see visualization, we have dashboards that Jira gives us in Scrum, yes. But then Kanban visualizes it in a different way, right? It uses a pull versus, Scrum uses more of a push. So we've taken a lot of the good elements from Kanban and have added it to Scrum. And this word, interestingly, and I didn't know that before we started preparing for this presentation, was that this came from an essay or an article written by Corey Lados. So that was an interesting revelation for us. All right, so what we'll do next is let's quickly refresh ourselves about what is Scrum and what is Kanban. And the reason for doing that is that a lot of people who join our presentations are people who are new to Agile, and they may or may not know a whole lot about Scrum or Kanban. So we want to do a very, very quick, very high level intro of Scrum and Kanban, and then we'll move on to what Scrumban is, if that's okay. So real quick, here is the Scrum overview, right? This is a busy slide, and I'm not going to read, word by word, but the highlights here are that you start with a vision, and you create what is called a backlog, which is a living document in which you capture all the needs, wants, and desires that you're getting from different sources for your particular project or initiative. And then the team continuously refines the backlog, and then prioritizes, and then goes through 1 to 4 week time boxed periods of work where you have 7 to 10 team members, and you continuously do that, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, whatever works for you. Most of the organizations that I have worked with recently are all doing 2 weeks, but that's not necessarily a rule. But then you make commitments for the sprint for that time box period of time, and then you have certain ceremonies that you have to do during that particular sprint, which typically are your sprint planning. Then you have your daily stand-up, in which for 15 minutes or less, everybody talks about what they worked on the day before, what is the plan for that particular day, and if they have any impediments or anything that's stopping them from making progress. And then at the end of the sprint, they present what they have worked on, the outputs and the outcomes. They present it to the stakeholders, get feedback from them, and incorporate the feedback. And then also have a ceremony called retrospective, in which they talk about during that particular sprint, what went well, what did not go well, and what should they do differently. Now, there are different flavors of doing retrospectives, but it's a very, very important ceremony because it helps them to continuously improve. So that, in a nutshell, is what Scrum is all about. Let's quickly examine what Kanban is about. And here's the Kanban. So Kanban is more continuous. There is no fixed time there. It doesn't have a 2-week or a 3-week period. It's more continuous. And basically what Kanban really means is that it is a visual system in which you are able to see how the different work items are progressing from, you still have a backlog, how it is progressing from the backlog to completion. And a lot of newer team members or a lot of new teams use Kanban because it's more simplistic. There are lesser rules here. And it really focuses on principles such as start with what you have. So, right, you don't need a whole lot of infrastructure. You don't need a lot of rules and regulations here. You start with what you have, and then you continuously improve. And then the values that they look for, that they use is, respect the current process. Like, you don't want to make drastic changes to the current process. You make all the rules very explicit, so everybody knows what rules you're following. And then you focus a lot on what is work in progress. So you don't want your team members to be working on way too many things at the same time, because typically that doesn't produce results. So you reduce the WIP, and everybody continuously works. And basically it's a pull system in which basically what it means is, for example, a work item moves from the backlog to analysis. And when the analysis is done, it's marked as analysis done. And then the people who are working in the next column or in the next phase, they're going to pull the story when they are ready for it. And Kanban brings a lot of value, which we're going to talk about in the next couple of slides. With that, let's move forward. So we kind of very high level understood what Scrum is, high level understood what Kanban is. And now the question is, how do we mix this? How do we make this remix wherein we take the best part of Scrum and Kanban to put it together? And for that, I would like to invite Minaxi to share with us.
Hello. So here we have some of the individual pieces, right? What defines Scrum and what defines Kanban? So as Toby has already mentioned, I'm just trying to go over it in isolation. Scrum, as some of us here who've already done this might know, is that there's a defined cadence, right? Toby mentioned that it could be a week, it could be 2 days. I've even experienced where people have Scrum of just 1 day. Scrum uses artifacts, right? We know you have a backlog, you have the retrospective, and of course, you have the ceremony of retrospectives as well. And in that defined cadence is what we call the fixed sprints. What are the characteristics of Kanban? Kanban, as Toby again shared, it's basically pieces of work that come in and go through different stages. And there is no kind of sprint planning as a standalone ceremony, or you don't have to take that special time out of your workflow. It's very visual. So I know Toby mentioned, and people see the Scrum board in Jira, but actually it is the Kanban board. That whole idea came from Kanban. And Kaizen is basically the inspect and adapt in Scrum, is what Kaizen is in Kanban. And again, you can have Kaizen as needed. So if something broke down or something didn't work, you can have Kaizen that very day. You don't have to wait at the end of the sprint to analyze and adapt and put that improvement in place or recommendation. And limit of WIP. So limit of WIP is basically, like in Scrum, what is a limit? The limit is what the team commits to for sprint planning. In Kanban, the limit is put in more like, we at a time will have maximum 6 items in our board. So if you have 2 in progress, 2 in testing, 2 in deployment, that's 6. That means that I will not go past the 6. I will not take a 7th one, no matter what happens. So that's how Kanban puts limit, whereas sprint planning, we put limits during that commitment time. So what does the characteristics of Scrum and Kanban, when we kind of blend them together, give us, right? The Kanban visual board gives us the transparency, and the Kanban pieces of continuously pulling in work as long as we are within the WIP is what gives us continuous delivery. What did Scrum do? It delivered at the end of the sprint. But with Kanban, there's this continuous delivery. What about bottlenecks? So for example, right, if you have a WIP of 6, you have 6 items, and the server goes down and you're not able to release. Even though there are no more tickets in progress, right? And no more tickets in testing, but all the 6 tickets are under deployment. Since nothing is currently leaving deployment, no new work will come in. And guess what happens? The higher ups are going to be upset, like, why are new tickets not being taken right now? So can you see how quickly that bottleneck got escalated? So it's a very effective tool using the WIP limits. While in Scrum, at least the Scrum that I've seen, that used to not happen, right? If deployments are stuck, since we are committed to the stories, the developers could not pay attention to the deployment, and they would keep pushing the next story because the sprint has been, we've committed to the story. So for me personally, that was something that my team really appreciated when they kind of could now say, no more, we cannot take any more. It's not about the sprint commitment. Kaizen, similarly, so when the server broke down, the deployments got stuck, once things start moving, we can do a Kaizen right away. Again, we don't have to wait for that 2-week sprint to end to do our retrospectives. And we set a limit. The Scrum and the Kanban allow us, even if you do sprint planning, it still allows you to set that WIP limit. So that's kind of the remix tape of Scrum and Kanban. So some of the kind of patterns and let's see, how do I say this? How do we meet those goals, right? So we said it's transparent. We said that it escalates issues and there's a continuous flow of release. So let's see how and what are the other peripherals that go with it. So basically, why use them is it fosters collaboration. When we mentioned, right, for example, the server breaking down, and that means the developer cannot be busy just pulling their new story because they've committed to it in the sprint, but they have to go and fix this problem with the deployment. Guess what it does, right? It brings everyone together, including the people not in the team, the higher ups, like what's going on? Why are we not doing the next piece of work that was committed in the sprint? So it brings everyone together. Based on a pull system, same thing, right? Everything is stuck. We are not pulling in any more work. Early detection of bottlenecks, we discussed. On-demand planning is another interesting one. So just like you have a WIP limit, the other limit is there's a limit to how many items can be in a backlog. So if let's say the backlog goes down and you have only 3 work items left in that backlog, now is the time that we can get together and do more backlog refinement to fill our backlog. With sprint planning, what would happen is, okay, I didn't do this item last sprint. I didn't do the item in the previous sprint. Now all of that is sitting in my backlog and the new work has come in. So my backlog is piling up. And come what may, I have to get together for that backlog refinement process. However, in Scrumban, some of that meeting time is flexible and can be eliminated. if there is work and they know what is to be done, until and unless they hit the minimum limit, you can continue with the flow of delivery. And that's what's given higher preference. So I know I've met some very happy developers because they don't have to come for sprint planning and refinement ahead of time. Handing over to Toby for the next slide.
Sure. So let's talk now about implementing Scrumban, right? So if in your organization, if you're starting from scratch, right? And if you are confused whether to use Scrum or Kanban, again, depending on where you are in the process, here are some tips that can help you get started. Or you're already using either Scrum or Kanban, are interested in learning more about Scrumban. So how do you get started with doing that? So first of all, right, take a step back and look at, what is this initiative all about? What is this project all about? What business goals, what vision are we trying to accomplish? And then based on that, evaluate whether Scrumban is the right fit for you. What I see as a coach is a lot of times I've seen teams where, some leader hears about a particular framework and says, oh, we should use this framework, and they start using it. And sometimes they don't really derive the benefits that you really expected to derive from that particular framework. So what I'm really trying to say is that any framework, any methodology, any approach, any custom approach that you're trying to use should be a means to the end, right? And not just doing it because, hey, another department is doing it, or my performance goals are attached to using this particular framework. So understand the goals first and evaluate if a particular approach or a tool or a framework or a methodology is going to work for you. Second, understand that the team's Agile maturity, right? Do they understand the basics of Agile? Scrumban is no different than any other framework where you have to know the basics, the very foundation, which is the manifesto, the principles and values of Agile. They should definitely know that, and you should evaluate what their experience is. The other thing that I'm going to point out is a lot of times when I work with different teams, team members bring their own Agile from their past experience, from their past project that they worked on. And sometimes people would say, oh, I know Agile. I've been doing Agile for the last X number of years or months. But then when you see them in execution, when you see them work, you realize, and then you have to coach them so much. So it's very important to understand where they are and then take steps if needed to either bring everybody to the same page or at least, maybe do a training together or whatever it needs to do, you need to do to bring everybody to the same shared page of music so that everybody understands where we're starting from. And then if you're starting a brand new team, you definitely need to identify the right people who can help you succeed with Scrumban or any particular approach that you're looking for. And then stakeholders are very important too, right? Like a lot of times I've seen that the team itself is Agile. They understand they are being Agile. They are very self-organized. But then the next layer up, they don't understand Agile. So it's important to share what you're going to bring, what are you planning to implement, what are you trying to achieve, and also share with them the principles, values, and guardrails related to Scrumban with them. And then you definitely, if you're already an existing team, chances are you have a backlog. But if you're starting from scratch, start with that, right? Create a backlog, a very simplistic document in which you basically have everything, the wishes, the needs, the requirements, whatever you want to call it, that is needed for that particular initiative. And then start with a Kanban board. And one of the principles of Kanban, which is start with what you have. So you can start simple. You don't need a very complex Scrumban board or a Kanban board. You can start with a very simplistic Kanban board, and then you build on it as you go forward. And then refinement. So if a team is moving from Scrum to Kanban, they are probably used to meetings in which everybody comes together and prioritizes. Or if this is a brand new team, at least the top portion, the prioritized portion of the backlog should be clear and should have adequate information so that the team can start working on it. A lot of people have the misconception that if you're doing Kanban, you don't need to refine the backlog. That is not true, right? So a lot of Kanban boards which I've seen are successful has backlog, analyzing, and during that analyzing or in that analyzing column is where they pull stories from the backlog and add some sense to it, right? So that when the story is pulled, it doesn't have to come back if there is not enough information there. So that analysis part is extremely important there. Not only are you analyzing, but you're adding information that is going to help the people who are going to actually work on that story. Okay. Then comes the established work in progress limits, now which is also called WIP limits. And this is extremely important. And this is imported from Kanban. And what WIP limits does is it limits the number of work items you're working on at that particular time. And science has proven this, that multitasking doesn't work. If you're working on too many things at the same time, chances are you're not making progress on any. And as the Chinese proverb goes, if you're chasing two rabbits, you're not going to catch even one of them, right? And that applies here as well. So you limit the number of stories or work items you're working on at that particular time, because that helps to improve the flow. So what do you mean? What do we mean by flow here? So you have the Kanban board, you have your backlog, you have your analysis, and then you have perhaps development, and then testing, and then acceptance, and there could be other additional columns as needed. But then what we are trying to do here is, if there are only one or two items that you're working on per person at a time, then chances are those are going to go through quicker and move to the next stage or ready to be pulled to the next stage. So it's continuously flowing. As opposed to if I'm a developer and I have 4 stories open and I'm taking forever to finish those 4 stories, and probably I'm going to finish 3 stories together, then that adds burden to the person who's going to test it. As opposed to, hey, I pull one story, I work on it, I finish, I mark it as ready to be tested, and the tester or the person who's performing the role of a tester is going to pull it and it's going to move forward. And then, so that's the work in progress. Then very important to create very explicit exit and entry criteria. For those of you who are familiar with Scrum terminology, you definitely need to have some format of definition of ready and definition of done. So if the story doesn't meet definition of ready, it is not ready to be pulled into development. And if the story or the work item has not meet the definition of done, then you cannot mark it as done. So it cannot go into acceptance at that point. It cannot go into peer review unless it's done. So in simple terms, for those of you who are familiar with Scrum terminology, it's definition of ready and definition of done. And then we, as a team, we agree on what metrics, because it's important to start from the very first day that you start, at least have a basic understanding of what are we going to measure? Why are we measuring it? And we have another slide where we're going to talk more about metrics. And that's pretty much it. You can get started with that. And a lot of people ask me, hey, who are the people involved in a Scrumban team? And as we stated earlier, right? So Scrumban really is adding more of the Kanban principles on top of Scrum, and it does not replace any of the people who are in the Scrum team. So as in a normal Scrum team, right? You have a product owner, you have a Scrum master, and you have the development team. In addition to that, in Scrumban though, you have business stakeholders. And the business stakeholders play an important role here. Now, I have worked with teams where they are doing Scrumban, but other teams in the particular program may be doing Scrum, and they have a cadence of a demo. A lot of times, the Scrumban team may be required to present something there, but most of the time, it may or may not happen that way. But if the business stakeholders are involved on a daily basis, and you're getting feedback from them, so the feedback loop is constant and iterative, it makes the Scrumban team to become a lot more successful. So there you have it. It's not very different than a Scrum team because, as I said, we are taking a Scrum foundation and adding more elements of Kanban as opposed to starting with Kanban and adding Scrum to that. All right, so next, let's talk about the typical challenges that we face. Minaxi, you want to cover that? And I can jump in.
Sure. I'm happy to take over from there. So does anybody here want to, because I do remember there was a transformation change agent. Does anybody want to share in the chat if you've gone through any changes and what did you see as impediments to the change in your team? Meanwhile, I'll start off of what our slide has. So the very top one is resistance. Resistance gets a bad rap often. There you go. Yeah. A lot of times we tend to see resistance as negative. I personally tend to see resistance as necessary because it helps us to actually think better. We don't get away with just pushing our ideas, but there are people resisting it. So we are forced to really think this through and refine it when we are asking for a change. So I actually like to think of the resistance to change both as an impediment, but also as like a quality control tool that allows me as a coach to go deeper and collaborate deeper with the team and see, okay, what can we do to mold this and make it better to reduce the resistance. The other challenge is fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And out of all the other characteristics of fixed versus growth, in a fixed mindset, one of the things is, that we are pessimist. We are like, no, nobody in my team will change. You know what? We will go back to the waterfall method. So why even try? That's the fixed mindset people. And the growth mindset people are like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's experiment with it. So sometimes those people who have been been with the old way of working are pessimistic about it. And again, that gives us an opportunity to identify that mistrust or that lack of trust and fix that in the team. So again, even though it's an impediment, it allows us to actually get to a better place as a team eventually. Taking a big bang approach, you probably might have seen this before, and if not, then it's very, very common that somebody, at the top C-suite level has decided that we are going to go agile and take a big bang approach as to like all teams have to go agile now. They'll bring in coaches and they'll be like, we're not going to do waterfall anymore, versus like kind of taking smaller teams, experimenting, getting them to be mature and scaling it up from there. Not giving adequate time for transition. Again, bring in coaches, set a deadline. Okay, in the next 6 months, this is our target. This is where we should get to as a team in terms of agility, quote unquote. That again is quite an unagile way of thinking and an impediment to actually becoming agile. Too much focus on tools. How many people here might have already heard, oh, we need Jira. If we want to go agile, we need Jira. Jira is a tool to help us go agile, but it doesn't mean that having Jira makes us agile, right? So that's the difference there. Inadequate agile skills. I think Jason brought up training for leadership. That's probably kind of what I would go with. A lot of times, the individual team members can be self-organized, can be self-governed, but the higher leadership doesn't kind of know because their role is changing. And so that is something that absolutely we as coaches, when we come in, we have this tricky task of navigating, of how to educate, train, enable, enlighten, and bring all the training pieces together for agile skills. Team dynamics politics, I mentioned in the fixed mindset, sometimes it's a trust issue, right? People have gone through so much history together in the past that they are saying like, this is not going to work. So yes, definitely that plays in. Insecurities play in, that if we go agile, XYZ people might have to lose their roles, titles, or jobs. So that's definitely part of that. Self-organization skills, it's very helpful to do real coaching and mentoring versus just bringing a coach who does training and certificates. Facilitating conflicts, that's again a very important part of bringing in the right coaching teams. And inadequate leadership support, which is again a very important aspect of where the agile coaches can come in and help. So let's see. Toby, do you want to take in some of the assessing progress, like happiness? What, you being the DJ and giving happiness to everyone. I'd let you speak on happiness, and I can take value delivery.
Sure. Yeah. So if you Google Kanban metrics, and you will find answers which are going to be cumulative flow diagram, stuff like that, right? Yes, that's important to know, okay, what does our backlog look like? How many things are in progress? What is, the average time it takes from the time a particular work item comes into your backlog till it is done? Or how long does it take before a particular work item gets added to your backlog and is ready to be worked? You will find a lot of that kind of metrics. But as somebody who has experienced introducing Scrumban to organizations, the things that Minaxi and I both have done that. So what we thought is, yeah, you can always find information about all of that metrics on Jira, or if you Google it. But what does it really boil down to, right? Happiness. So what does happiness mean here? Is the team happy? Are they content? Are they engaged? Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you measure happiness? Well, if you are working with the team on a daily basis, you have a good understanding of what the happiness is. You see that the team members are very engaged. You see that the stakeholders are engaged. They like the products that are delivered by your team. They see value in what is being delivered. And then you also see, customer delight. And so those are few things from a happiness perspective. And end of the day, right? Happiness is a very, very important metric, which often we don't talk about. So that's what I had on happiness. Minaxi, you want to talk about value delivery?
Yep, I'd love to take that. So let's say a customer comes and says, I want a dwelling, right? Now, a dwelling could mean a yacht, an RV, a townhome, a single family home, a fort, a palace. So what is valuable to that client? Is building a yacht for someone who lives in a desert valuable to the client? No, it's not, right? So what we delivered, what impact did it have? And what impact did it not have? What value did it bring to that client? And what value could have been brought to that client? That assessment in Scrumban, we are hoping on a continuous delivery model, right? And when Toby said stakeholders are involved with the team, not outside of the Scrum team, you'll get that feedback right away. And that's how you assess progress. Are we on that right goal of meeting value or not? Toby, over for efficiency.
Sure. I'm going to club efficiency and nimbleness together. Right?
Okay.
And I really like the word nimbleness. And what does nimbleness mean? So nimbleness means a person's or a team's ability to be able to respond to change. And that's a very important tenet of Agile to begin with, right? So you're not saying that, hey, I'm committing myself to X number of stories for whatever timeline that your particular sprint has the cadence for, versus you're saying, you know what, I'm working on these 1 or 2 stories, and then I'm going to go back and see what has come up, what is important, what is critical, and then I'm going to work on that next. So your ability to work on the next most important thing quickly, in my opinion, that is nimbleness, so that you are actually responding to the most important thing at that particular time. And efficiency, and I talked a little bit about it, and for those of you who are familiar with Kanban, you're familiar with lead time, which I talked about, from the time a story comes or a work item comes into your backlog till the time it is ready for the developer to pick up, or cycle time from the time a story or a work item comes into your backlog till it is completely done, right? And efficiency in Scrumban teams it really comes from reducing the WIP and managing the flow. So the goal is for the whole team to look at where are the bottlenecks? Are we getting stuck somewhere? If there are work items which are getting stale, and it's something that I've used when I was working with Scrumban teams, is where we have a concept of aging. Hey, we pulled up the story, and day 1 we put 1 dot, day 2 we put second dot, day 3 we put the third dot, and everybody is able to visualize that, and everybody sees that, hey, this story has been in our queue for 4 days, what's going on here? And then everybody swarms to see where the problem is, and they solve it, and it moves forward. You don't have to wait for for a scrum master or somebody else to solve it. The team self-organizes. So what happens is that the whole process becomes very efficient, because you're working on a few things at a time, you're self-organizing to solve the problems, and you're pulling what is most important and efficiently delivering it. And Minaxi, I'll pass it on to the last one, which is effectiveness.
Right. This is something that you'll find in also concepts of PMP and Lean Sigma, if you're familiar with lead time and cycle time. So effectiveness is, I took this particular object, and I know if it went through all the steps, it should be ready in 2 days, so 16 hours. However, there were handoffs in between. And because of that, this object takes us 5 business days to make. That is one of the beauties of Kanban, that is clearly visible, and we know whether it's being effective or not. So the idea of Scrumban or Kanban is to reduce those in-between wait times or queuing up times to improve effectiveness. Awesome. And so that's one of the key assessment metrics, especially for the data-driven people.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. How do you assess progress? What do you measure? And real quick, what we wanted to share with you is that we shared some information on Scrumban, and obviously a 45 minutes or a 1 hour session is not enough for you to know and learn everything. So what we did was we pulled some really good books on Scrum and Kanban that you could utilize to learn more if you're serious about bringing Scrumban into your organization. And then we also have online resources that you can click on, where you can find a lot more information for you to learn from. And obviously, Minaxi and I and everybody from Loudoun Agile Network are here standing by to help you if you are thinking about implementing Scrumban in your organization. With that, we want to bring our event today to a close. And what we wanted to share with you is, it really is a mindset. Agile is a mindset, and we succeed by being agile, not by doing agile. If you just are going to follow the steps, you're just going to follow the framework, chances are you're not going to succeed. And the last sentiment that we want to share, it's a journey, right? Your goal is not to do Scrum. Your goal is not to do Kanban, but to derive the benefits of it. And who's stopping you from mixing, one or two things together to make it work for you? And with that, I want to pass it on to Anju. I know we are getting close to 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Toby, for amazing session. Thank you, Minaxi. Thank you, Toby, for putting this great session. So I do not see many questions here except one in the chat, which says that traditional workplace culture, based on your observations from several countries, how long do you think does it take to change the culture and mindset?
That's a great question. And it's a global thing though. But in my opinion, it really depends on the organization and not necessarily just on the country or which latitude or longitude you are in, but it depends on the company. And my personal, and I would love to hear your thoughts, Minaxi, my personal reflection on this is the culture of an organization is the combined beliefs, the assumptions, and the ways of working in that particular organization. And no organization is the same forever. Like there is change happening throughout the life cycle of an organization. Just like human beings, organizations are also organisms which start with something, they grow, and then they have an end. And during that life cycle, during that journey, they go through a lot of change. But to answer your question, how long does it take to change a mindset? How long does it change? How long does it take to change the culture of an organization? What I want to reflect on is that instead of an organizational culture, you find more micro pockets of culture throughout the organization, which roll up to become the organizations. So each kind of group, each kind of, what do you call it? Like a business unit, each of them have their own cultures. But on top of it, it can be also a universal or an umbrella culture of that organization. And what I found is, I don't have an answer to how long does it take, but I know it is difficult to change culture. It's difficult to change mindset. And one of the things which is happening in the coaching industry is what is called micro changes. So I would invite you to learn more about micro changes. How can you bring micro changes in your team, in your organization? It's easier to make small adjustments versus large adjustments. I'll stop at that. Minaxi, do you have anything that you want to share?
You hit the nail on the head. Look small and let that have a domino effect. And there is no such thing as how long it takes to change, because change is constant. Every time we reach a new place in life, we will discover more about ourselves and about our team members. And that's what being agile is about. It's continuous improvement.
Yeah. Awesome. Back to you, Anju.
Thank you, Toby and Minaxi. I hope this answers your question, guys. I see another follow-up question. How to train stakeholders, which I think is a topic in itself for which we can have a session. But I'll defer to Toby and Minaxi to wrap it up quickly. It's 8:04 already. So based on your
Actually, you want to start and I will add. Is that okay?
Sure. I did mention to Jason, that is such a unique case-by-case basis. In short, happy to book some time and have a one-on-one conversation. But yeah, take it up. Toby, you can take it from there.
Sure. So I think more important than training stakeholders, I feel and I know Jason You've been attending a lot of our events, so I got to know you over the last few months. So I know you operate as a Scrum Master. So my kind of guidance to you would be to really understand what are the needs of the stakeholders first. What are they looking for from this partnership between you and them, right? And then also assessing what are the gaps they have in their knowledge. A lot of times, especially I work a lot in the federal government, a lot of times the general style of working is, hey, you take a big chunk of work and you pass it on to the contractors and you think that, okay, it'll be done. Whereas in Agile, you need a whole lot more involvement from them. It's not like waterfall where you say, okay, here's the statement of work. I'll see you in 8 months, give me the product. So one is to make sure that the stakeholders understand what is the role that they play in that particular team's work. So for example, if somebody is a subject matter expert, for them to know their availability, their depth of knowledge, and how they sharing knowledge is going to help the team members. Now, for example, if there's a product owner from who is a stakeholder, then that person understanding the role of a product owner, which basically is being a conduit between, right? So explaining to them what their role is, and also the coaching becomes a very important part of it as well. So one-on-one coaching, a lot of times people don't say a whole lot of things in public, but if you talk to them one-on-one and say, hey, John, I know you and I and working together with the team more closely today, what is it that you're concerned with? What would you like to see? So having that one-on-one rapport helps them to open up as well. It's less about training because training sometimes doesn't stick, but guiding them through. So everybody goes through training. A lot of times stakeholders go through training as well, but it doesn't stick. And I think what personally for me, what works is when they are working and operating as a stakeholder, making that personal connection with them and helping and guiding them through and not judging them. I'll stop at that.
Thank you, Toby. It's 8:07. With that, we'll wrap up today's session. Thanks everyone for joining our knowledge sharing sessions and looking forward for our next session. So please join our LinkedIn network and be in touch. Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.